Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to the Evaluation Series Part 4, How to Use Your Evaluation Results for Community Support and Additional Funding. On the screen, you'll see a quick introduction to the tools that are available to you. There is a teleconference connection, and if you're using the telephone, please select that button. There's also an audio setup wizard which will allow you to set up your headset and microphone. Later in the session, we'll be asking you to possibly raise your hand and answer a few questions or possibly ask some questions, and this is where you can do that. There is a whiteboard and some tools, however we won't be using them during this session. And there is a chat box for you to ask questions throughout, and if you're having any technical difficulties or anything like that, you can type it in there, and Anthony Caioli, our CEO, is actually available today to help you with that. This session is being hosted by the Alaska Region TTA Center. Again, we have our Regional Director, Anthony Caioli. He has 19 years working with capital projects, development, and fundraising. Myself, Angela Camus, I'm the Training and Technical Assistance Manager with over 16 years of working with a vast array of clients in grants management and project development and process improvement. We also have our Technology and Outreach Manager, Charles Peels. He's not on with us today. He has 6+ years in project management, business development, and vast array of technology. And we also have a pool of consultants with various areas of expertise, and one of them is on with us today, Christine Celentano. She'll actually be talking with us later in the presentation. The TTA centers, of which there are 4 regions, Western, Eastern, Alaska, and Pacific, we all provide free training for project planning and development, pre-application, and post-award. We also offer free technical assistance for project planning and development, pre-application, some on-site assistance after you've been funded, some assistance after if you were an unfunded applicant, as well as other grantee technical assistance is available to you. We have information on our ANA Alaska website. We also offer Google Plus communities for collaborating and sharing resources with the other tribes and organizations, both nationally and regionally. And you can go to gplus.to/ANA Alaska. And from there, you will be connected across the country. And of course, there's a connection to the National ANA website at acf.hhs.gov/ANA. There are several upcoming webinars. On August 1st, there's a foundation funding by the Western region. Okay, I'm going to do a quick sound check. And can someone raise their hand if they can hear me? Okay. All right. Great. I just wanted to quick check on that for a moment. I thought I lost my microphone. Thank you very much, everybody, for participating in that. All right. So other upcoming webinars, August 1st, we have foundation funding by the Western region, and the sustainability series begins on August 8th, and part 1 is on August 8th, part 2 is on August 22nd. It will continue into September on the 12th, and the last one will be on the 26th. And just like this series, if you participate in all 4, you will receive a certificate from ANA. So Evaluation Series Part 4, How Evaluation Provides Evidence-Based Results to Building Your Community Support. We want to talk to you today about enriching this support through your community, and other funders. And your future projects. I want to give you a brief recap of the first 3 parts of this series. Evaluation is a user-friendly process to enhance internal capabilities and external communication. It is a powerful and useful tool. Part 1 showed you how to learn how to grow your organization and improve your project's chance at success and instill a culture of constant improvement discovered through evaluation. Part 2 showed you how to modify your appropriate evaluation for your project, choose and learn some reliable measures. Part 3 explored how the evaluation data can be a tool to help refine your internal workflows and processes, and they discussed various tools to do that with, as well as incorporating the cultural values and ways into the evaluation process. As a grantee, knowing your process well and incorporating a good evaluation plan, capturing good data allows you to communicate the project story in a powerful and meaningful way to multiple audiences. The data provides a level of proof and truth. The evaluation, the webinar today will provide you with tips on communicating project evaluation results to solicit your community support. We will present ways for you to think about utilizing your project data to enhance community support and ownership of the project and to communicate information to current and future funding entities and partners. So crediting your partners and donating resources, promote an understanding of your community, share your expected and achieved project outcomes are just a few of those items. Our learning objectives today will be to look at how the data can be used to create your community awareness. We want to assist you to clearly tie your data to your project, the objectives and your impact indicators, how to capture good data. You want to use consistent measures and create a really persuasive tool for presenting this data to others. And of course, know your audience. Who are you going to present this to so that you can build and enhance your community support and approach additional funders? So here's some examples of how evaluation data can be collected and compiled throughout the project implementation. It is up to each individual or entity to decide what will work best for them and determine the best method for relaying pertinent information regarding project outcomes. Key in this is to be consistent in the data you collect and the times you collect it, using the same measurements. For example, if you're looking at surveys and collecting surveys or pre and post tests, you want to be sure if you're doing surveys that you're asking the same questions of everyone so that in the end you're showing the same measurements and you will actually be able to capture the change that occurs over time. The same holds true with pre and post tests. You want to be sure that you measure the first test and the second test using the same data. Again, you could also be monitoring your sales or tracking some in-kind contributions, and you can compile your information daily, monthly, quarterly. You want to make sure that happens on a regular basis. You can capture it via photographs, audio and video, databases and spreadsheets, and you can use this information in the end to report to your funders, your tribal council, your board of directors. You can present this in meetings and conferences, you can put it in newsletters, or you can use it for your organizational websites and social media sites. Today we're going to look at a small sample, and so we're going to create a visual representation using some Microsoft Office tools. We're going to use Excel today, but you can use Excel for your charts and your graphs. Obviously PowerPoint, such as what we're using today, to create some presentations. You can use Publisher or Word to create your newsletters and brochures and flyers. You can also use Google. For those of you that have Google accounts, you can now go into Google Drive and select Create, and you can create a spreadsheet there as well as create your charts and your graphs. You can use Presentation to create a potential PowerPoint, or Drawing for newsletters and brochures. This allows you to create them live and collaborate with folks from across your organization or even in another organization on the same document. And it is a free source, and there is other open source tools that you can find on the internet for creating these and capturing your data. So today we're going to use a quick example, and we've pulled what would look like part of your OMB OWP, your Objective Work Plan. So we're going to use an example of a language project objective, and we'll show an example of how the data can be collected and entered. We're not going to go through all of the steps. As someone said, it's kind of like the cooking show. We're going to show you the first part, and then we're going to show you the finished product. So we're going to create a pie chart to graphically represent some project information and criteria, and show the useful interests for and how you can possibly use this to present for outside agencies or maybe even to your tribal council. So the objective that we're going to use here is by the end of month 12, Smart Tribe kindergartners will be taught native language words through the delivery of the Smart Tribe language curriculum. Now, as you can see, the criteria for evaluating that is tied to the objective is that staff will conduct pre and post native language word tests with the incoming kindergarten class. Additionally, as a benefit, they're going to track, the criteria for tracking will be tracking the student participation numbers by recording daily attendance. So we're going to look at a spreadsheet that looks at the pre-test and the post-test after a year. So we've opened up a spreadsheet, we've collected the students' names here, and we gave them a pre-test and recorded who can speak 0 to 10, 20 to 50, and then a year later we've given them the same exact test and recorded those results as well. For this example, we have used the COUNTIF so that we can capture the data and indicate the end result. And now Excel has many formulas, and these are also available in Google Spreadsheets. They're the same formulas, actually. And so we've highlighted the data after we've captured it, and we've created two pie charts. One where we showed the pre-test, and then one where we showed the post-test. And this comes from this data on this side of the sheet. So now we have clear data that shows the obvious change in their ability. Now we have over 100 students speaking. There was no student in the pretest that could speak 100 words, and now 10% of our students know 100+ words. So data like this is pretty impressive. We also have students speaking 50 to 100 words, 30% of them, and none were up here in our pretest. So we would use this data that we've already collected to now build and enhance community support. You're tracking progress throughout your project implementation. And this is the information that you're going to be used for more than data accounting or for submission into an ANA OPR. Here are some of the ways to consider using project evaluation in this. You can share information on your tribal newsletters. I mentioned that earlier. You can make some programmatic reports to the council or board of directors. Using these graphs and diagrams to gain local business support. You can show your tribal capacity, your culture initiative to solicit some state and local government support, future federal funders. You can also use this data to inspire and recruit more volunteers or other partners. We mentioned this earlier, that it is very important that you know your audience. Who is your presentation going to be created for and delivered to? What do they care about? What is the goal of your presentation? Are you informing the community and partners? Are you looking for feedback? Are you recruiting support to address some challenges? Are you celebrating your successes? Remember to always allow time during or after a presentation excuse me, for some question and answers, which allows you to fine-tune your communication efforts. So again, you want to tailor your presentation to your audience. For example, you wouldn't present the same way to an elementary class as you would to your tribal business leaders, or a potential federal funder, or even at a conference or a meeting of your colleagues. It is very, very important that you know what is important to your audience, and then you highlight that. Show the effectiveness of your program. Emphasize your successes. You want to show the relevance to your goal in this presentation. So if you're looking for volunteers, you're going to have a different presentation than if you're going to someone and looking for some extra funds and equipment. Again, remember, ask for feedback. Don't forget to do a little research on who you're looking at. Know what's important to them. And then be prepared to offer your contact information or leave them with a flyer or a business card. Now, if you're using your data for planning or for approaching funding entities, you can now potentially take this information and maybe you do it in a different form of graph. Maybe it's a bar graph, or maybe it's just statistics. And you can use it for some strategic planning. Maybe you're going for a business loan, or you're going to use this information to put into a business plan. Or maybe it's just for future programmatic planning. It will show you your strengths and weaknesses, where you can improve, and what you need to work on, and what you can highlight for your success. Again, research and tailor your presentation. Is it for your tribal staff? Is it for a foundation? You're going to want to find a foundation or future grants that have the same mission and vision as you, so that you're not now trying to change your program to meet the funding. You're finding funding to meet your program. Maybe you're going to talk to some elected officials. Maybe you're trying to create a new partnership with some school districts or universities. Again, show the effectiveness of your program. Emphasize your successful approaches. Highlight the value of incorporating indigenous knowledge through stories, history, and place. Share your tribal cultural commitment, the contributions through song and dance, tribal member volunteers, tribal council time. Remember to highlight the whole project, but focus on those immediate successes where you have your data. Show the relevance. Are you requesting funding, supplies, equipment? Introduce yourself. Find out about them. Research them and know what's important to them. Maybe you need to send them an introductory letter. So knowing what's important to them allows you to better introduce yourself. Don't be afraid to call them or schedule a visit. Discuss ways that they can be of assistance and become involved. So today we've taken this information and now we're gonna have a small, short presentation through story to kind of help you show how this becomes relevant and how it is used in a live case situation. To do that today, it is my pleasure to have Christine Celentano here with us. Christine has worked in Alaska with Alaska Native tribes across our state since 1995. She has served as an environmental program director with the Chugach region until 2007. She worked as a training and technical assistance consultant in Alaska and along with the Eastern region. And Christine has managed 2 ANA regulatory enhancement grants at Chugach and assisted tribes within the region to secure their own ANA grants. She is joining us today to show a sample of how utilizing program data elevated project exposure, increased partnerships, and accessed additional funding under the Wetlands Project. Welcome, Christine.
Good afternoon, Angela. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. Angela asked me to talk a little bit about an example of when we were able to use some of the data from our project and utilize that and enhance our program tremendously. So we were working on a tribal wetlands project in 2 neighboring villages in the Chugach region, and the goal was to create a tribal wetlands management plan, and it covered an area of 100,000 acres. The objective was to develop community support for tribal wetlands management planning between the 2 villages. The leaders had come to Chugach with an interest in doing this. However, the community wasn't as on board with this idea, so we tried to discover ways that we could get the community involved. So a survey was delivered door to door by people who live in the community. So we helped them develop the survey. The same questions were asked at each home. And then the results were information about what was important to each community member. So those were compiled and used in an educational brochure. There were lots of pretty pictures. There were pictures of people from the community, and they were talking or had a quote under their name, sort of a testimonial. And this brochure was then used by just wanting to let everyone know about what the tribal councils were interested in, what was really important and why it was important to them. We handed that brochure out so that it was just available. So it was in the clinics, it was in the schools, it was in anywhere that seemed like a good place to have them hanging on the wall. So it was in the post office, and I think it got most play in the clinics. And then we were asked to talk a little bit about what was going on with this Tribal Wetlands Project at the Alaska Environmental Conference that happens in February, and Tribal Conference on Environmental Management. So we brought a bunch of brochures with us there, and people were picking them up left and right. Oh, what's going on? What's going on? What's happening? So all this information was on there about the communities, about what was important to them, and then contact information. It generated a lot of interest in the effort that was taking place, and it was decided that maybe we should put something together like a video. And if we put a video together, we could actually have people from the community, the tribal leaders talking, the elders talking, the subsistence fishermen and hunters, could talk about why wetlands were important to them, where they recognized the wetlands to be, and without giving away specific information. And also there was information from various federal, like there was someone on there from EPA and someone on there from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service talking about why a traditional Western view of why wetlands are important. So it was kind of both a Western science point of view as well as a traditional point of view. And it was all put into this video with lots of pretty pictures, great interviews with people, and then the video just catapulted the whole project kind of into space. It was amazing. So people wanted the video in DC, people wanted the video in Washington, in other parts of the country, and then we couldn't keep up with agency requests. They wanted copies of the video to share with like another department or planning agency in this area or this field. So as a result, specifically for the tribes that were involved in this project, they had 2 new federal partners come on board. They had more stakeholders join the planning committee, and which included the regional and native corporations. They had additional subsistence hunters and fishermen that were using the area, even if they weren't from the community. Elders, children, the water operators joined and became part of the meetings. Everyone had input, which made this plan so much better and so much more comprehensive, and addressing the needs of the community, gave community ownership, which was the whole intent of the initial survey and brochure. So this was all working out well. The university got wind of what was happening and offered technical assistance to train members in rapid bioassessment methods for water quality monitoring, and supported the volunteer data collection. And that data actually still goes into a US EPA database so that they can monitor surface water and stream water quality and quantity. Additional funding was secured for developing a wetlands education curriculum through the EPA. Additional funding was provided for supplies for these great airport display signs. So as soon as you get off the plane, you could see what the community was involved in and how they were protecting their wetlands. Also, additional funding was acquired to put the elements that were, I just said that. The elements that were in the brochure, the initial, very first brochure, were actually put onto these airport displays. The only thing that was included on there that wasn't there before was a map. And then there was, BIA had a special program and offered GIS training so the tribes could learn, tribal members and participants in the planning endeavor could learn GIS and how to use it and how to create maps. And this was just a bonus because people wanted to be able to identify culturally used, traditionally used areas and keep them confidential. And it was a pretty neat thing, and the kids were involved in that. So it was just another sort of outbreak of this whole initial effort, which was a brochure as a result of a survey. And then we had more technical assistance by from the USDA NRCS. They do snowpack surveys around Alaska, and they offered to train. They were actually the water operators. They were training them in how to conduct snow surveys. So the end product was a wetlands management plan that was supported by the communities, by the members, by the business leaders, by the leaders, council leaders, elders, children. There was a school representative at every meeting. We had them monthly, and it just generated a lot of outside interest and support. People that wanted to really help with this project, they wanted to jump on board. They were asking, by the time the information came out, people wanted to know, how can I be a part of this? How can I help? What can we do for you? So it was really quite effective, both within the community and outside the community.
Thank you, Christine. Actually, Don Miller has one question for you before we go on, and he wanted to know, how did you approach the part of the population who lacked the basic understanding of the science?
Okay, thanks, Don. That's a good question. So we did, in that brochure, we put together some, everything became a little more technically advanced as people became more interested. So in the initial brochure, it included the survey information, but also the survey provides a little bit of information exchange as well, because people will ask, you know, one of the questions was initially, do you know what wetlands are? So that was one of the questions to begin in the survey. So we could get an idea of how people identified those areas. And they mostly called them swamps and bugs and water holes and streams, lakes, rivers, that kind of thing. But we were able to, from those responses, develop some really great educational materials so that all, including children, people could jump on board with the terminology and the understanding of not only what wetlands were and where they were, but their function and why that was important. So people had actually a pretty innate understanding of how wetlands worked without us having to throw the Western science, technology, and technical terms in there. They really already knew how it was working.
Thank you, Christine. So as you can see, sharing your project results consistent with your native values is very powerful. This all of those things that happened with Christine's project began with a survey about asking consistent questions through each household, compiling that data, and putting it into a meaningful brochure. And that was the beginning. And it exploded. Now, that doesn't mean that every project will go this way. However, it does give you this powerful, powerful tool. In a Western context, you know, life is all about bragging and being competitive. And in many Native cultures, tooting your own horn may not be consistent with your values. So what we want to do is ask you to raise your hand and share if you have done this in a good way and you have a small story that you can share with others to give some folks some other ideas. To do this, we'll ask you to raise your hand using the raise your hand button, which is underneath your name in the participant box. We'll call on you. When you go to speak, you can press the talk button, and then we ask that as soon as you're done sharing, you would press the talk button again. So does anyone have a story that they could share with the group? Okay, well, we have one more story if you don't have a story, and that is Anthony Caoli, our CEO, is going to give you another example of how data collection was used and how sort of, if you pay attention closely in the story, you'll see that they didn't have the data up front and they've had to go back and try to collect it. Anthony?
Okay, thanks, Angela. This is just a brief story about a housing program, and basically in Alaska and probably in a lot of parts of any country, housing is it's at a crisis level. And in this particular community, literally half the housing stock has been condemned and is unfit for habitation. So it's, the whole issue is real controversial, and so in this case, the community had actually opted to take over the housing program and had been operating it for since the beginning of NAHASDA. Some of you may be familiar with the Native American Housing and Self-Determination Act, where it empowered the tribes to basically manage their own housing programs. And so this community had done that from the very beginning when the NAHASTA statute was enacted. And through the process, learned that some of the housing that was constructed prior to that 30 years ago was basically, it wasn't designed for the Arctic and was in really bad shape. So there was a kind of a controversy in the community about the direction of the housing program, and it boiled down to, was the community and the tribe actually performing with their program, or how well were they performing? And although the tribe is required to report that data every year, through the performance reports, they hadn't actually been very effective at communicating that data. So when the controversy hit and there was discussion about possibly reverting back to the regional housing provider, it really forced the tribe and the community to look at their results. And so as a result of that, they ended up going through 15 years of their performance data and pulling out the statistics of how many people were employed, how many houses were constructed, how many new innovative types of housing were spearheaded, and how they had managed to reduce or improve the energy efficiency of some of those homes, as well as how many homes had been rehabbed. And after they compiled all that data and put it into a simple newsletter and also shared at one of the annual meetings, I think it helped the community to better evaluate the performance of that program. And during recent meetings about it and about the fate of that program, they ultimately decided that they would continue to operate that program and not revert back to the regional provider. And that really I think was because of the housing program focusing in on its performance data and sharing that through different means, kind of like what we've heard today, through the newsletter, through sharing stories, through the public annual meeting, and so on. So it's just another example of why it's really important in your programs to track that data and to be proactive with that and to share your results with the community, through newsletters, and there's other ways you can do it now through Facebook and Google+. Okay, thanks, Angela.
Thanks, Anthony. So I wanted to let everyone know that there's a resource page for Microsoft Education website and a Google Docs video tutorial, and we will send those out towards the end. We'll send out those links towards the end of the presentation. I wanted to open up this time for questions and answers. You can put questions in the chat box or raise your hand. And again, if you do raise your hand and we call on you, you would push your talk button, and then when you're finished, push your talk button again to turn your mic off. This helps us not have echo. We'll also be sending out, it's going to come right out on your screen, an evaluation for today's webinar. And we would ask that you would take the time to complete that before you move on and while we're doing some questions and answers. I have, let's see, I have something here. So Christine Celentano was telling us, by the way, she did not know how to use Publisher or create a brochure when she started. It was easy to use other people's words and ideas, acquired through the survey and then put it on paper. Don Miller says, the Oneida have been making efforts to improve the availability of farm fresh foods for the health of our members. The result of our education efforts, there has been significant improvement. We have a farmer's market, an expanding buffalo and beef herd, and more of our people have begun eating the traditional foods, and it has had both a physical effect, but it has also increased communication within the community as people of all ages share stories about their past experiences, with mothers and fathers sharing those foods as a family. That's wonderful, Dawn. These are just, again, examples of when you start capturing the data from your program and start using it to build the support within your community, support of future funders, bring in volunteers, potentially leverage and get some more partnerships, which provides not only the human support, but it also provides some financial assistance, whether it's in-kind support, maybe some donated meeting space or some food for your meetings. The possibilities are truly endless, which is what makes this data capture and evaluating your program so very, very powerful. We're hoping that through this entire series you have really learned the value, that you've received some tools, that we showed you even a small method today. We want each of you to know that the TTA centers are available to assist you with your project development, defining your measurables, and creating some spreadsheets for tracking. The measurables you choose should be easy for your staff to measure and don't necessarily require hiring an outside source. This way, additionally, you're keeping your project funds within your community, within your organization, or within your tribe. We hope that we've been helpful for you today. Let's see, what does Don add here? Don says, because many of us will be seeking financial assistance from non-tribal people, how can we make these community-specific beliefs and feelings important to them? Don, that is where, when I was talking about knowing your audience, you want to take your traditional beliefs, your those feelings that you have, you want to be able to place them in a brochure that matches up with also what's important to them, so that the presentation has a really nice married match to it. Christine or Anthony, did you want to add something to that?
Hi, Angela. This is Christine. I was just typing this, but sharing your beliefs and your culture with others outside of your organization is an opportunity to educate and inform them and expand their reach, especially with a foundation. So I would look for foundations that are interested in fresh foods, interested in nutrition and health of any members. It doesn't even have to be the Native American community, but then there are those foundations also that have a strong interest in supporting Native communities. So using your information in the way that means the most to you and is showing a value of a community will always reach a funder, whether it's a federal funder or a foundation, will always reach them in the way that you mean for it to. And if they are open to that, then you want them as a partner. If they're not, then that's not who you want to partner with anyway. That's all.
Are there any other questions? I see someone's typing. Yes, you will be receiving a copy of the presentation. I was hoping to have one in advance, first thing to hand out to everyone, but I will make sure that everyone gets it after this is over. Any other questions? Oh, I see someone else is typing. Anthony wants you all to know that the survey that you're filling out today comes through Google Docs. It's a great tool for collecting data. We actually use that for collecting our data. Yes, Liza, the presentation, Liza wanted to know if the presentation would be via email, and yes, it will come out via email. So as you can see, the evaluation form is on your screen now. And before you leave, again, I would ask that you would fill this out. It will help us to do better. It's part of our evaluation data that we collect. I see Ruth is typing. If there are other questions, please feel free to put them into the chat box. So Ruth asked, for those that have attended all 4 parts of the evaluation series, who do we contact, or will ANA contact us? ANA has a list of everyone who has attended, and they will be sending out certificates. In the event that something happens, then I would contact them through the ANA Help Desk, which the phone number for that, and I'll type it into the chat box, is 1-877-922-9262. And maybe Anthony can also dig up the ANA Help Desk email, and you can email them to ask about the certificate. I'm sure it'll probably take a week or more after this is concluded before those go out. But again, if you haven't heard anything in about 30 days, I would go ahead and contact them. Don't forget, the Sustainability Series starts August 8th, and the Funders webinar is starting, I believe, August 1st. We look forward to seeing all of you again. So if there's no other questions, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the session. Again, I would ask, please fill out the evaluation form. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I hope that you took away some great information from all 4 parts of the series, and we do look forward to seeing each and every one of you. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.